You'll never amount to anything, Lena, just another lost cause. Her foster mother sneered years ago, a weary baker who spent her life kneading dough and clawing through a past of foster care and gambling debts, never knowing a rainy night would drag her into the unknown. 30 minutes after midnight, she stopped to help a young man, Ethan, jumpstart his stalled car. The next day, a rich woman knocked at her door. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Narrative Whispers. Today, I'm going to share another heartwarming story. So let's dive into it. The rain drummed against the windshield of Lena's old sedan as she drove home from her late shift at Maple Street Bakery. Streetlights cast golden pools on the wet asphalt, and she hummed softly to herself, trying to ignore the growing ache in her feet. 10 hours of standing had taken their toll, but Mrs. Dawson had slipped her an extra blueberry muffin before closing, a small kindness that made the long day worthwhile. Lena smiled at the thought of the older woman, with her silver-streaked hair always escaping from her hairnet, and the reading glasses perpetually perched on top of her head, forgotten until needed. As she rounded the corner onto Cedar Avenue, her headlights swept across a figure hunched beside a stalled car. The person, a young man she could now see, was bent over an open hood, shoulders hunched against the downpour. Lena's first instinct was to drive past. It was nearly midnight, and years in foster care had taught her wariness. But something made her slow down. Perhaps it was Mrs. Dawson's voice in her head saying, "Remember how it feels when no one stops to help, dear." With a sigh that clouded the car window, Lena pulled over, leaving a good 10 feet between her car and the stranger's. She flicked her hazard lights on, grabbed her umbrella from the back seat, and zipped her jacket up to her chin. "Need a jump?" Lena called out, staying close to her car, umbrella tilted against the rain. The young man straightened, pushing wet hair from his forehead. He couldn't have been older than 25, with glasses speckled with raindrops and a soaked gray sweater clinging to his thin frame. Relief washed over his face, visible even through the curtain of rain between them. "That would be amazing," he answered, his voice carrying a note of embarrassment. "I've been trying to flag someone down for almost an hour." Lena nodded, popping her trunk to retrieve the jumper cables she kept for emergencies. Another lesson from foster care. Always be prepared for when systems fail you. "I'm Ethan," the young man offered as Lena approached, her steps careful on the slick pavement. "Lena," she replied simply, handing him one end of the cables while she worked to position her car nose to nose with his. Rain trickled down her neck despite the umbrella, and she shivered. "Do you know how to connect these?" she asked, gesturing to the cables. Ethan's sheepish smile told her everything. "Engineering software I can handle, car engines not so much," he admitted with a self-deprecating laugh. Lena found herself smiling back, surprising herself. She usually kept interactions with strangers brief and impersonal, but something about his unassuming honesty disarmed her usual defenses. "Red to positive, black to negative," Lena explained, demonstrating with practiced movements. "Always connect the dead battery first, then the live one." Her hands moved confidently, muscle memory from the countless times she'd jump-started her own unreliable car. Ethan watched attentively, asking questions that showed he genuinely wanted to learn, rather than just letting her do the work. When both cars were connected, Lena returned to her driver's seat and started the engine. "Give it a minute to charge before you try," she called through her open window. The rain had lightened to a drizzle, and Ethan leaned against his car's frame, wiping his glasses on a relatively dry corner of his shirt. "You're a lifesaver," he said with genuine gratitude. "I was beginning to think I'd have to abandon ship and call an Uber, which would have been complicated considering my phone died about 20 minutes ago." While they waited for the battery to charge, Ethan explained that he was returning from visiting his sister, Clara. She runs this startup called Blue Horizon Co. They develop sustainability solutions for businesses. I help with their software sometimes. He spoke with unmistakable pride about his sister's work. Lena nodded, only half listening, her mind already drifting to her small apartment and the leftover pasta waiting in her refrigerator. The day had been long, and tomorrow would start early. Mrs. Dawson needed her to cover the morning shift, for another employee who had called in sick. Twice the work, but not twice the pay. Still, she couldn't say no to Mrs. Dawson, who had taken a chance on her 3 years ago when no one else would hire a woman with a spotty employment history and no references. "Try it now," Lena said after a few minutes had passed. Ethan slid into his driver's seat and turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then rumbled to life. His face lit up with a grin that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You're amazing," he exclaimed, climbing back out to help disconnect the cables. As they worked together to coil the jumper cables, Ethan asked, "Do you live around here?" Lena shook her head, suddenly conscious of the distance between her rundown neighborhood and this affluent suburban area where she happened to be passing through. "I work at Maple Street Bakery on the other side of town," she said, gestures vague. "Just heading home." She didn't mention that home was a one-bedroom apartment above a convenience store that smelled perpetually of fried food and cigarettes, where the radiator clanked all night and the neighbors argued until dawn. "The bakery with those amazing cinnamon rolls?" Ethan's eyes widened with recognition. "My sister and I stop there sometimes on our way to the office. They're life-changing." Despite her exhaustion, Lena felt a small spark of pride. Those were her cinnamon rolls, her recipe, tweaked from one Mrs. Dawson had taught her when she first started. "I make those," she said, unable to keep a hint of satisfaction from her voice. "They're my specialty." Ethan looked genuinely impressed, and Lena felt herself warming to him despite her usual caution around strangers. There was something unassuming about him, a lack of the judgment she'd grown accustomed to facing. Most people took one look at her worn clothes and tired eyes and made assumptions about who she was and how she'd ended up working 60-hour weeks at a bakery at 32. "I should get going," Lena said, glancing at her watch. Nearly 12:30 now, and she needed to be back at the bakery by 5. Ethan nodded, but hesitated before returning to his car. Would it be okay if I bought you a coffee sometime? To thank you properly?" The question caught Lena off guard. She wasn't used to kindness without conditions, to genuine gratitude. Her experiences had taught her that most offerings came with hidden costs. "You don't have to do that," she said, her voice stiffer than she intended. Ethan backpedaled immediately, raising his hands. "No pressure at all. It's not every day someone stops to help a stranger in the rain at midnight." He smiled again, that same crinkly-eyed smile that seemed free of ulterior motives. "Maybe I'll just have to buy extra cinnamon rolls instead." Lena found herself lingering, though every practical bone in her body told her to leave. "It's nothing," she said, shrugging. "I've been there. Dead battery, no help in sight." The words slipped out before she could filter them. "Foster care teaches you to be prepared for anything." She regretted the admission immediately, but Ethan's expression didn't change to pity or discomfort, as most people's did when she mentioned her background. He simply nodded. "That must have been tough," he said, his voice gentle but not condescending. For some reason she couldn't explain, Lena kept talking, words spilling out in the quiet night air between them. "I aged out of the system with no family, no safety net," she said, her eyes fixed on the wet pavement rather than Ethan's face. "Worked whatever jobs I could find. Got into some bad situations. Made worse choices." She thought of the gambling, the desperate belief that one good win could change everything. Lost friends along the way, some to accidents, some to choices like mine. Jimmy's face flashed in her mind, her best friend from her third foster home, who'd wrapped his car around a telephone pole after a night of drinking and cards, taking with him the only person who'd known Lena's whole story. "Mrs. Dawson at the bakery took a chance on me when I was at rock bottom. She's the closest thing to family I've got now." The rain had stopped completely, leaving behind a fresh, clean scent and the gentle dripping of water from tree branches. Ethan was quiet for a moment, absorbing her words without rushing to respond or offer hollow encouragement. "Thank you for telling me," he finally said. "And for stopping tonight. Most people wouldn't have." The sincerity in his voice made Lena uncomfortable. Genuine emotion often did. and she took a step back toward her car. Well, your battery should be fine now, just make sure to drive around for a while before turning the engine off again. Professional, practical advice, safer territory than personal revelations to strangers in the night. Ethan nodded, respecting her retreat. I will, and seriously thank you, Lena. My sister always says small kindnesses change the world. I think she's right. Lena drove away with the strange feeling that something significant had just occurred, though she couldn't have explained why a simple roadside assistance would feel momentous. She chalked it up to exhaustion and the unusual circumstance of having shared personal details with a stranger. By the time she reached her apartment, climbed the 3 flights of stairs, the elevator perpetually out of order, and unlocked her door, she'd nearly convinced herself the entire interaction had been inconsequential. She heated up her pasta in the microwave that occasionally sparked, ate standing at her small counter, and fell into bed without bothering to change out of her uniform, setting her alarm for 4:15 a.m. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was of Ethan's crinkly-eyed smile. Morning came too soon, gray light filtering through the thin curtains Lena had hung when she first moved in 4 years ago. She moved through her routine mechanically. Shower, coffee, hair tied back in a practical bun, minimal makeup to hide the dark circles under her eyes. Mrs. Dawson had once told her she had bedroom eyes, a phrase that had made Lena laugh out loud. That's just chronic exhaustion, Mrs. D, she'd responded. The older woman had clicked her tongue disapprovingly. No, dear. They're soulful, seeing eyes, the kind that notice things others miss. Lena had dismissed the comment, but sometimes she wondered if there might be some truth to it. The bakery was quiet when she arrived, the street outside still dark. Lena loved these moments before opening, the silence, the clean counters, the possibility contained in the raw ingredients waiting to be transformed. She tied her apron, washed her hands, and began mixing dough for the day's cinnamon rolls. By the time Mrs. Dawson arrived at 6, the first batch was already filling the bakery with its spicy, sweet aroma. You're a godsend, Lena, Mrs. Dawson said, hanging her purse on the hook behind the counter. Her silver-streaked hair was already escaping its clip, and her reading glasses were, as usual, perched forgotten on her head. She peered at Lena's face. You look tired, dear. Trouble sleeping? Lena shook her head, not wanting to worry the older woman with tales of midnight rescue missions. The morning rush kept them both busy, a steady stream of commuters grabbing coffee and pastries on their way to work. Around 10, when the shop had emptied except for a couple of regulars lingering over laptops in the corner, the bell above the door chimed. Lena glanced up from wiping down the espresso machine and felt a jolt of recognition. It wasn't Ethan, but a woman who had to be his sister. Same warm brown eyes behind stylish glasses, same gentle smile. Instead of Ethan's rumpled academic look, though, this woman exuded polished professionalism in a blue blazer and silver earrings that caught the light. A small blue enamel pin on her lapel matched the color of the van Lena could see parked outside, its side emblazoned with a logo, Blue Horizon Co. The woman approached the counter, her gaze settling on Lena with an expression of pleased recognition that suggested Ethan had described her in detail. You must be Lena, the woman said warmly, extending her hand across the counter. I'm Clara, Ethan's sister. He told me about your rescue mission last night. Lena shook Clara's hand, noting her firm grip and the calluses that suggested she wasn't just an office executive. It wasn't a rescue, Lena demurred. Just a jump start. Clara's smile widened. My brother would have been stranded for hours if not for you. He can design incredible software but can barely operate a toaster. There was fond exasperation in her voice. Mrs. Dawson, overhearing, gave Lena a curious look from where she was arranging muffins in the display case. Lena felt her cheeks warm slightly. Can I get you something? Coffee, one of our cinnamon rolls? I think there's one left from the morning batch. Both, please, Clara said, glancing at the pastry case. And actually, I was hoping to talk to you about something. She glanced around the bakery, which had emptied entirely now. Do you have a break coming up? Lena looked questioningly at Mrs. Dawson, who waved her hand encouragingly. Go ahead, dear. I can handle things for a bit. Curious and slightly wary, Lena poured 2 coffees and retrieved the last cinnamon roll, warming it slightly before bringing everything to a small table near the window. Clara sat across from her, adding cream to her coffee with precise movements. Ethan mentioned you're the mastermind behind these, she said, breaking off a piece of the pastry. He wasn't exaggerating. This is incredible. Thank you, Lena said, warming slightly at the praise, but still wondering why this successful-looking woman wanted to talk to her. Clara didn't keep her in suspense. Ethan also mentioned you've had a challenging path, she said directly, though her tone remained gentle. He was really moved by your conversation last night. Lena stiffened, regretting her unusual openness with a stranger. Clara must have noticed her discomfort because she quickly added, I'm not here to pry. I'm here because Blue Horizon is growing, and we need someone with practical skills and adaptability. She took a sip of her coffee, studying Lena over the rim of her mug. Someone who knows how to solve problems creatively, work hard, and, forgive the corporate speak, think outside the box. Ethan says you jumped his car like someone who's done it 100 times, explaining each step clearly. That's exactly the kind of capability we need. Lena set her coffee down carefully, trying to process what seemed to be happening. Are you offering me a job? The possibility seemed so unlikely that she half expected Clara to laugh and clarify some misunderstanding. Instead, Clara nodded, her expression serious. We need an operations manager, someone who can coordinate resources, manage practical aspects of our sustainability projects, and train team members on implementation. It's a challenging role, but from what Ethan observed and what I can see myself, you have the exact qualities we're looking for. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. This contains information about the position, including salary and benefits. Take time to think about it. And this, she added, placing a smaller envelope beside the first, is a thank you for helping my brother last night. Stunned, Lena stared at the envelopes without touching them. You want to hire me because I gave someone a jump start? The question came out more skeptically than she intended, but Clara didn't seem offended. I want to offer you an opportunity because you demonstrated practical knowledge, clear communication, and kindness to a stranger when there was nothing in it for you, she corrected. Those are rare qualities, Lena, and exactly what our company values. She pushed the second envelope closer. This is just a token of appreciation, regardless of whether you're interested in the position. Lena finally picked up the smaller envelope, opening it to find 5 crisp $100 bills. She nearly dropped them in shock. I can't accept this, Lena said immediately, trying to push the money back toward Clara, who simply folded her hands on the table. Yes, you can, she said firmly. Consider it payment for roadside assistance if that makes it easier. But it's yours, no strings attached. Her expression softened. Ethan told me you mentioned having no safety net. I know what that's like. Our parents died when I was 19, and Ethan was 16. If not for a professor who took a chance on me and my ideas, Blue Horizon wouldn't exist. She tapped the larger envelope. Read through the job details. If you're interested, there's a number to call. If not, no hard feelings. She stood, leaving her coffee half-finished. Either way, thank you for being kind to my brother. After Clara left, Lena sat motionless at the table, staring at the envelopes as if they might vanish if she looked away. Mrs. Dawson approached, curious concern evident in her lined face. Everything all right, dear? She asked, sliding into the chair Clara had vacated. Wordlessly, Lena pushed the smaller envelope toward her, watching the older woman's eyes widen as she peeked inside. Good heavens, Mrs. Dawson breathed. Did you save that young woman's child from a burning building? Lena managed a shaky laugh. I gave her brother a jump start last night when his car died. She picked up the larger envelope, running her fingers along its sealed edge. And apparently she wants to offer me a job. That evening, alone in her apartment, Lena finally opened the larger envelope. The salary figure made her breath catch, nearly 3 times what she currently made at the bakery. Benefits included health insurance, retirement contributions, and educational reimbursement. The job description mentioned sustainable technology implementation, team coordination, and client training, tasks that seemed both challenging and interesting. At the bottom of the page was a handwritten note in elegant script. "We believe your practical experience and resilience would be invaluable to our team. No fancy degree required. We value what life has taught you." Lena read the materials twice more before setting them aside, her mind swirling with possibilities she'd never allowed herself to consider. She thought of Mrs. Dawson, who'd be devastated to lose her at the bakery, and of the security that had long eluded her, suddenly within reach. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for her phone. 6 months later, Lena stood at the window of her new apartment, watching golden autumn leaves drift past. The view overlooked a small park rather than a convenience store parking lot, and the building had a working elevator and a security system that actually functioned. In the kitchen behind her, Mrs. Dawson was teaching her son, Miguel, how to properly fold apple turnovers for the small cafe they now ran together on the ground floor of Blue Horizon's office building, a venture partially funded by Clara as an employee benefit and community outreach project. The arrangement had allowed Mrs. Dawson to sell her struggling bakery before it bankrupted her and to move with Miguel to this safer neighborhood, closer to the physical therapy center that was helping his recovery from a motorcycle accident. "Lena, come taste this filling before I commit culinary heresy," Mrs. Dawson called, her voice carrying the lightness that had returned to it in recent months. Lena smiled, turning away from the window. The apartment still felt surreal sometimes. The solid furniture, the absence of strange noises and smells, the security of knowing rent was automatically deducted from a bank account that replenished itself every 2 weeks without fail. Even more surreal was the work itself. Challenging, yes, but fulfilling in ways she hadn't imagined possible. Her practical knowledge, honed through years of making do with limited resources, translated perfectly to helping businesses implement sustainable practices without breaking their budgets. Clara had been right about that at least. And Ethan, now a regular visitor for Sunday dinners, continued to be exactly as he'd appeared that rainy night, genuine, kind, and refreshingly straightforward. "Coming," Lena called back, picking up her phone to silence a notification, a text from Ethan asking if she wanted to join him and Clara for a movie that evening. She thumbed a quick affirmative response before heading to the kitchen, where Mrs. Dawson was frowning critically at a pot of simmering apples. "I think it needs more cinnamon," the older woman declared, handing Lena a spoon. "Your taste buds are more reliable than mine these days." Miguel looked up from his careful folding of puff pastry, flour dusting his forearms. His physical therapy was progressing well. He could now stand for several hours, though he still used a cane for longer distances. "Mom's trying to reinvent your cinnamon rolls in turnover form," he explained with a grin. "She thinks it'll bring in the morning crowd who miss your specialties." Lena tasted the filling, considering. "More cinnamon, yes, but also a pinch of cardamom," she suggested. Mrs. Dawson's eyes lit up. "Brilliant. I knew there was a reason I kept you around all those years." She bustled to the spice rack, a housewarming gift from Clara, while Lena leaned against the counter, watching the easy domesticity of the scene with a sense of wonder that hadn't faded. 6 months ago, she'd been living paycheck to paycheck, wondering if she'd ever escape the cycle of barely getting by. Now she had savings, a retirement account, and people who felt like family gathered in her kitchen. All because she'd stopped to help a stranger on a rainy night, sharing pieces of herself she normally kept hidden. Later that evening, sitting between Ethan and Clara in a darkened movie theater, Lena found herself paying more attention to her companions than to the film. Clara, usually so composed, was completely absorbed in the action on screen, occasionally whispering commentary that made Ethan roll his eyes good-naturedly. Their sibling dynamic reminded Lena of what she'd missed growing up without consistent family, but instead of the usual pang of loss, she felt a quiet contentment. The foster care system had failed her in many ways, but it had also taught her to recognize genuine connection when it appeared, and to value it accordingly. Ethan caught her watching them and smiled, that same crinkly-eyed smile from their first meeting. He leaned closer to whisper, "Everything okay?" Lena nodded, surprising herself with how true it felt. "Never better," she replied honestly. Walking back to their respective apartments after the movie, Clara linked arms with Lena as Ethan walked ahead, describing his latest software project with animated gestures. "I have a confession to make," Clara said quietly, her breath fogging in the cool evening air. That night Ethan's car broke down wasn't entirely coincidence. Lena glanced at her, eyebrows raised in question. Clara smiled, a hint of mischief in her expression. He'd been stopping by that bakery for weeks, always hoping to talk to the woman who made those amazing cinnamon rolls. When his battery actually did die that night, he called me in a panic, saying it was near your bakery. I told him maybe it was fate. She squeezed Lena's arm affectionately. "I didn't expect you to jump-start more than his car, though. The company's operations have improved 30% since you joined. The team loves you." Lena processed this revelation, torn between amusement and disbelief. "You're saying your brother had a crush on me because of pastries?" Clara laughed, the sound bright in the quiet street. "He has good taste in both baked goods and people, it seems." Ahead of them, Ethan turned, suspicious of their conspiratorial tone. "What are you two whispering about?" Clara winked at Lena. "Just girl talk, brother dear." Lena felt warmth bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee they'd had after the movie. The feeling of belonging, of being valued not just for what she could provide but for who she was, remained new enough to feel miraculous. The next morning, as Lena prepared for a client meeting, she found herself reflecting on the strange turns her life had taken. 6 months ago, stopping to help Ethan had seemed like a simple act of kindness, the kind Mrs. Dawson had taught her to value. She couldn't have imagined how that single decision would ripple outward, transforming not just her own circumstances, but creating possibilities for Mrs. Dawson and Miguel as well. Clara had once explained that Blue Horizon's mission was about creating sustainable systems that supported both people and the planet, and Lena had realized that was exactly what had happened in her own life. A sustainable system of mutual support had replaced the precarious balancing act of merely surviving. The foster child who'd learned to expect nothing had somehow found herself at the center of a chosen family. As she gathered her presentation materials, Lena's phone chimed with a text from Ethan. "Good luck today, you're going to amaze them." A moment later, another message appeared from Clara. "Remember, you've got this. Your practical approach is exactly what they need." And finally, from Mrs. Dawson. "Saved you a turnover." Cardamom was the perfect touch. Lena smiled, tucking the phone into her bag. The gambling addict she'd once been would have called her current situation a jackpot, a lucky break against impossible odds. But Lena knew better now. This wasn't luck, it was connection. It was what happened when people recognized each other's value and created space for growth. It was kindness coming full circle, the most sustainable resource of all. Thank you for listening to this story. If you like it, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story of Narrative Whispers.